What's going on, everyone? It's the 16th of April, 2024, and welcome back for this, the 72nd edition of the Superstream. My name is Derek, your narrator for this video, and just as in every Superstream, we'll be taking a look at the week that was and discuss the numerology of some of the more important or obscure news stories in the media. Today we'll be kicking things off by taking a look at Iran's mostly failed attack on Israel, an attack which failed to kill anyone. Focus on this first. After that, we'll take a look at the death of DJ Mister Cee, a radio DJ who also was known for discovering the notorious Biggie. There's been a lot of news lately with Tupac, Diddy, and now the Biggie. The whole crew seem to be in the news lately. We'll talk about that. Also, a curious revelation riddle in this story about Jelly Roll's plane making an emergency landing. On April 8th, the UConn Huskies won their second consecutive NCAA men's basketball tournament. And this happened on the date of the total solar eclipse that passed over the United States. And speaking of the eclipse, if you'd allow me to indulge myself, I'm going to talk about the organic numerology of my own trip to view the eclipse on Monday, April 8th, and just talk about some of the fascinating numerology that manifested throughout that trip. Now, if you're new here, first off, welcome, as you've managed to find one of the most censored and hidden topics on the internet, and that's not hyperbole. Now, to properly understand the numerology discussed on this channel, it's important to have a basic understanding of the language of Gematria, which is an ancient mystical concept that the alphabet also doubles as a numerical cipher. In fact, throughout human history, language has been associated with numbers more often than not, and as you will discover, still is to this day. Throughout this video, I'll be talking a lot about the standard cipher of English Gematria, which uses the current alphabetic order with numerical structure identical to that of Hebrew Gematria and Greek isopsephy, two languages where letters were used as numbers. These glyphs evolved into the Latin alphabet, which still has relevance as well, as demonstrated here in a method also called Agrippa's key, as it was first brought to light by Heinrich Cornelius Agrippa in the 16th century. These extended methods typically provide pretty large numbers, whereas ordinal gematria often yields a smaller and much more practical number. This cipher branches off into reverse and reduction, giving us what we call the base 4 ciphers. And when you observe these methods and compare the numbers to dates on the calendar, both date numerology and date durations, it quickly becomes apparent that we are all living out some sort of script. And here on this channel, we take a close look at that script and often even provide clues to future events foretold by this code. So let's kick things off by talking about one of the bigger news stories from this week, as tensions in the Middle East have escalated yet again. On April 13th, Iran and a number of other rebel organizations fired upon Israel, where the Iron Dome took over and seems to have shot down a lot of these rockets. And, it's interesting. We got this whole Wikipedia page for the attack. But without any deaths, they had to put people admitted for anxiety, which is something I've never seen on a war battle page before. But nonetheless, we're going to talk about this story and how it actually connects to the 2007 film 300, which portrays Persians, modern-day Iranians, in a rather negative light. Notice how in Latin Gematria, the nation of Iran has Gematria of 130, whereas the number 300 sums to 130 in the English ordinal method. 130, a number I talk about a lot. In numerology, this actually represents the number 13, as zeros are customarily ignored. And we'll see how this connects to the skull and bones, Freemasonry, and total eclipse riddles that have been a point of focus on this channel for quite some time. For starters, just look at the date of the attack, the 13th of April. Overseas, this date is written as 13/4, a lot like the number 134. In Ordinal, the phrases solar eclipse and Vesica Piscis, the shape that the sun and moon create before the eclipse, both phrases sum to 134. If you're to take the phrase solar eclipse and add total solar eclipse, notice how this has an ordinal value of 202, whereas in the reverse order, skull and bones equals 202. The supreme leader of Iran, Ali Khamenei, was born during brown lunation number 202. Now, a brown lunation number, every new moon that we have is given a new number. This has been going on since 1923. It's the most common lunation number, the brown. And we'll be talking about this throughout the video, but for this decode, we're going to talk about another lunation number called the Millennium lunation number. And this is a system that only counts new moons since the turn of the millennium in the year 2000. When 300 was released back in 2007, it hit theaters in the United States on March 9th. Now, why is this date interesting? Well, if you've been following my work at all for the past year, you know about this date, October 9th of 2023. This was a very special date to the occult, as Yale University, home to the Skull and Crossbones Society, turned 322 years old in 2023. And this is a fact that will carry you through many decodes in this video. Well, notice how this movie came out exactly 202 months before Yale's big anniversary last year. The movie was even written and directed by a man named Zack Snyder, who was born in Green Bay, Wisconsin. And Green Bay, Wisconsin sums to 202 in ordinal, whereas Wisconsin equals the 202nd prime number in Latin. Prime numbers divisible only by 1 and itself. You'll see here, Wisconsin, the 202nd prime number. And of course, Wisconsin was admitted to the Union on May 29th, which can be written 29/5. And when you write out the number 223 as it's spelled, it equals 295. So does 322, 295. So let's talk about how this syncs up to the number 300. Now, every couple months I give a shout out to another YouTube channel who certainly doesn't get enough attention, 7711. I'll go ahead and link his channel below after this video. And a couple months ago, he made this really good observation about the movie 300 and how the eclipse that just happened over the United States began millennium lunation number 300. Now, once again, 300 portrays Persians in this film, which is modern-day Iran. The name Zachary Edward Snyder, the film's director, his full name has Gematria of 300. This method, using capital letters, where the alphabetic order is maintained, but capital letters are added, 26 for each one, to the equation. The chief villain in this film is named Xerxes, and that name has 2 X's in it. This eclipse over the United States that began millennium lunation 300 completed 2 X's over the United States. Remember, we had these 3 eclipses over the past 7 years, and there's 2 X's here. Now, when you think of 2 X's, often you think 2 X chromosomes, right? The female. And in this movie 300, the Persians are made to look too effeminate, according to critics, because of this king. The letter X in Latin Gematria has Gematria of 300. And in a notable cipher called Fibonacci, where the first 13 Fibonacci numbers are used, kind of like a staircase up and down the alphabet, the word eclipse sums to 300, so does secret society. And again, this attack during Millennium Lunation 300. And wouldn't you know, the very next day, CNN had an article saying that Israel managed to intercept more than 300 Iranian missiles and drones. When Yale had its special anniversary on October 9th, that date was 300 days after December 14th. December 14th, the birthday of Ibrahim Raisi, the president of Iran. October 9th also falls 300 days before August 3rd. August 3rd, the date that Raisi became president of Iran. Also using capital letters, the name of Jesus Christ sums to 300. And this stood out because the attacks occurred 985 days into Raisi's presidency. In Latin Gematria, Jesus equals 985. Notice how the president's name has matching 1104 Gematria with Operation True Promise, the name of this attack. Also 300, when you write the letters out, sums to 1104. This Sumerian method, for the record, again maintains the alphabetic order but multiplies every value by 6. Also, for the attacks, Raisi was exactly 760 months old. In reverse reduction, skull and bones equals 76. So, Raisi was born on December 14th, and in the year 2020, December 14th, we had a solar eclipse. And this solar eclipse, December 14th of 2020, was exactly the halfway point between the two great American eclipses. 1,211 days after the first and 1,211 days before the second great American eclipse. And on the date of that eclipse in 2020, Raisi turned 720 months old. And this is a very significant number to the moon and sun. The word eclipse equals 720. Remember the Apollo 11 moon landing? The first time men landed on the moon? Well, yeah, they landed on 720. And there's a lot more to do with that combination, but also notice how the word eclipse sums to 95 with capital letters. This attack was exactly a span of 905 weeks after the movie 300 first debuted in Austin, Texas, a few months before its premiere. Islamic Republic of Iran sums to 950 in Satanic Gematria. Satanic, a pretty interesting method that focuses on the number 666. Pi also equals 95. More on that in a second. 666 equals 95 in reduction. And remember, a span of 95 weeks is exactly 666 days. 666, also an important number to Jesus, the Son of God, as displayed through the magic square of the sun. But I want to talk more about this pi and September 11th riddle. Some of you may have seen my last video on this channel where I talked about a significant pi riddle with September 11th and the death of astrophysicist Peter Higgs. I guess he was more of a theoretical physicist. But that story was loaded with pi numerology, and we see much of the same in this attack by Iran. Notice how Iran's supreme leader, Ali Khamenei, was born 7,911 days before the president, Ibrahim Raisi. And 9/11, once again, the date that many Christians believe Jesus was truly born. The name of the operation, True Promise, has gematria of 119, using the S exception. Eclipse in the English Kabbalah, another 119. But on the date of the attacks, Iran's supreme leader was 1,019 months old. He was actually 1,019 and 25 days old. Now, this 25 is another number that points to pi, which sums to 25 in ordinal. The attacks were also 205 months after the wide release of the film 300. Supreme leader of Iran has matching 205 gematria with both Israel and Yale University. The first 4 digits of pi are 3.141. And look how old Ali Khamenei was on the date of this attack. 31,041 days old. And when we talk about pi, this all circles back to a skull and bones riddle. Because the numbers 223 and 322 are the first 2 numbers with ordinal gematria of 314, the first 3 digits of pi. In fact, the word circle has gematria of both 223 and 322. And of course, it was a bonesman, George W. Bush, Yale graduate, in office for the 9/11 attacks. And think about how heavy the pi code is embedded into the language. 22 divided by 7 equals 314 in the alphabetic order. And on a calculator, 22 divided by 7 is the smallest equation to get the first 3 digits of pi. So more on the skull and bones code. Now, on this channel, the last time I focused heavily on Iran was in January of 2020, when on January 3rd that year, their top general, Qasem Soleimani, was assassinated in a U.S. strike. And then less than a week later, Iran shot down an airplane over the country, a Ukrainian Airlines, killing 176 people. These were 2 huge stories out of Iran at the time. And I just thought it was interesting that these attacks were 223 weeks after the assassination, and also 222 weeks and 3 days after the plane crash. The Skull and Bones Society over there at their little buddies at Yale University, also known as the Brotherhood of Death. And this brings us to another part, as Brotherhood of Death equals 187, commonly known as the Homicide Code, as it is in California. The phrase total eclipse with 187. Iranophobic 187, which 300 was accused of being. These attacks fell 187 days after the Brotherhood of Death's anniversary at Yale. Remember, October 9th was the special date. But not only is this 187 days, it's also 6 months and 4 days. And Skull and Bones sums to 604. Don't forget, 64 is 32 times 2. Which are, again, the digits on the emblem. Another important number to Skull and Bones is 66, because 3 times 22 is 66. Well, in Latin, the word eclipse equals 66, and these attacks on Israel fell 6 months and 6 days after the Hamas attacks on Israel, which began on October 7th. The attacks were ordered from Tehran, Iran, and both the city and nation each have gematria of 66. So 66 and Skull and Bones have matching gematria of 41. These attacks fell on a date with 41 and 61 numerology. Iran's Supreme Leader taking office on a date with 41 numerology. Supreme Leader 61 like skull and crossbones. Also, Operation True Promise with matching 110 Gematria with skull and crossbones and Supreme Leader of Iran. And I thought this was interesting because the Supreme Leader of Iran, his primary duty is to carry out the policies of the Republic from Article 110. Syncing up with all of this neatly tuned Gematria. So it does really seem like all of these nations are participating in some sort of wag the dog ritual. And that's not to say that there aren't any real tensions in the world. But at the top of the chain, it does appear to be that this is all some sort of bread and circus, doesn't it? Or the hungry masses looking for more entertainment. Next up, we're going to be talking about the death of DJ Mister Cee. DJ in New York City up until about 10 years ago or so. But what he's best known for is discovering the Notorious B.I.G. And the Notorious B.I.G. famously murdered in 1997, shortly after the Tupac killing, at a time of much tension in the hip-hop world. Mister Cee died at the age of just 57, and no cause of death was given at the time. It looks like nothing's been updated since. No surprise. Using the S exception of Gematria, this method is identical to reduction, with the only exception being the letter S. S is the 19th letter, so if you add 1 plus 9, it sums to 10. And if you stop there, DJ Mister Cee sums to 57. The Notorious B.I.G.'s real name was Chris Wallace. And in ordinal, the names Chris and Wallace both sum to 57. Mister Cee also is a perfect supermatch with Notorious in the base methods. But notice the number 52, shared by Mister Cee and Notorious. His real name was Calvin LeBrun. Calvin LeBrun has matching 52 Gematria with Ready to Die and Biggie Smalls. And I want you to think about this again. April 10th, 2024, for Mister Cee, a guy named LeBrun. Well, also on April 10th, we had the death of O.J. Simpson, which I did a video on, of course. And someone in my comments mentioned that there's some LeBron connections. And I didn't really bother with that because, it's a different sport. I focused on football, which is what OJ played, but it did appear as if, who was it? I think it was Call Me Kinfolk who made a video about the numerology of OJ connecting to LeBron James. And clearly, something was true there because that same day that OJ died, we got the death of this DJ named LeBrun, a lot like LeBron. And for more on this DJ riddle, go ahead and check out my channel for this KC parade shooting video I made. And in this video, I talked at length about a significant riddle with DJs in the NFL. And DJs dying. Like the one person to die in this shooting was a DJ. And I thought I did a full breakdown of this. But yeah, check out the video for yourself. There's been something going on with DJs this whole last year. The Notorious B.I.G. was born on the 21st of May, or 2105. That date was 2105 days after Mister Cee was born. And the name DJ Mister Cee with caps equals 215. These digits are also found in the Gematria of Moon, 21 and 57. Mister Cee dead just 2 days after the moon covered the sun. He was a span of 21,057 days old when he died. But that's also exactly 713 lunar phases. In standard English, the phrase total eclipse sums to 713. Now, the total solar eclipse that we just saw, and before I go on, actually, Notorious B.I.G. dead on March 9th of 97. That was the same date as a total solar eclipse. This year's eclipse, on April 8th, belonged to Solar Saros 139. Every eclipse belonging to a particular Saros series. Well, this number 139 is really important to this because the Notorious B.I.G. album, Ready to Die, the only one that Mister Cee produced, was released on 13/9, the 13th of September. And Mister Cee was a DJ at 103.9 FM. Biggie's real name, Christopher, sums to 139 in the alphabetic order. And this date, the 13th of September, that's also the date that Tupac Shakur died exactly 2 years later. And in ordinal, Tupac Shakur sums to 139. So, the next part of this riddle, I want to talk about Herb Kent. And Herb Kent is the DJ I talked about at length in my last video about the death of the Kansas City DJ. This goes all the way back to the death of Dick Butkus, who died on October 5th, Herb Kent's birthday. Dick Butkus, of course, a member of the Chicago Bears. Herb Kent, a longtime DJ in Chicago. In fact, the longest-running DJ in the history of radio. And this all happened a couple months after DJ Casper died. DJ Casper shares a real name, William Perry, with William the Refrigerator Perry, a guy who used to play for the Chicago Bears. So it all goes back to Herb Kent. Now, the name Mister Cee sums to 457, which is the 88th prime number. And Herb Kent died at the age of 88. Mister Cee died on April 10th, which was the 88th birthday of John Madden, a man whose name is virtually synonymous with the NFL. The words rapper and radio both sum to 88. Mister Cee was born 88 days. Actually, B.I.G. was born 88 days before Mister Cee's birthday. By the way, the city of Chicago even sits on the 88th meridian. You check out the coordinates. It says 87, but the 88th meridian does split through the city. The name Herb Kent sums to 38 reduction and 380 standard. Mister Cee was born on a date with 38 numerology and then died on a date with 38 numerology, just like Biggie, whose death date had 38 numerology. Rapper equals 38 in reduction. And when Mister Cee died, he was exactly 3008 weeks old. The words death, murder, killing, RIP, all 38. A number attributed in the Murder by Numbers poster. Another really significant number here, though, is 33. As, again, this is all connected to the eclipse, which equals 33. Notice how the name Herb sums to 33 in the alphabetic order. The names Chris and Biggie both equal 33. And Biggie died 33 sidereal months after his debut album. Mister Cee was a DJ in New York, which equals 33. And he resigned from his job about a decade ago amid rumors that he was gay, and gay equals 33. He even had the 33 in his age when Herb Kent died. But check this out. When Herb Kent died in 2016, just before the Cubs won the World Series, it was during Brown lunation number 1160. In standard Gematria, the Notorious B.I.G. equals 1160. And when Big dropped his debut record, it was on a date with 116 numerology. This is, of course, an upside-down 911. And 911 is the 156th prime number. So the number 156 is important here too, because 33 also sums to 156. World Trade Center construction beginning 33 years after it was destroyed, and then it was destroyed on 9/11. Notorious B.I.G. died a span of 156 days after Herb Kent's birthday. And notice how his full name, Herbert Rogers Kent, equals 1506. And when Herb died, he was 1,056 months old. When Mister Cee died, he was 21,056 days old. He was a DJ in New York, New York, which equals 156. And again, dying on John Madden's 88th birthday, which is also exactly 1,056 months. But there's even more with the number 33 here. If you square the number 33, you get a product of 1,089. Herb Kent died at exactly 1,089 lunar phases of age. Mister Cee died 189 days after Herb's date of death. I'm sorry, his birthday, October 5th. Reminding us that Biggie died a span of 189 days after Tupac. And this number came up in my decode on DJ Casper, whose real name, William Perry Jr., has double Gematria of 189, and he died 189 days before the Super Bowl. Finally, if you take 3 to the third power, 3 times 3 times 3, the product is 27. Mister Cee died 2,727 days after Herb Kent. Like how his last name LeBrun sums to 27. His death was also 27 years, 33 days after the notorious B.I.G. But what's so crazy about that is that not only do you get this double 33, technically, right? But look at the number of days, 9,895. Well, in Latin Gematria, 33 equals 895, just like ritual human sacrifice. So a very intriguing decode here, particularly since other people were already picking up on this LeBron riddle with O.J. Simpson. And then on the same day O.J. dies, we get the death of a man named LeBrun. Sometimes this stuff is pretty wild, isn't it? All right, next up, a little more of a lighthearted decode, as I wanted to take a quick glance at this news story about Jelly Roll. And I don't know a whole lot about Jelly Roll. All I know is that he makes my absolute least favorite genre of music. Seems like a decent guy, but I do want to point out that the record industry has a habit of pushing people with past problems to the top. It's almost like they take people who can't control themselves so that they have stars that they can control. And again, Jelly Roll's ascension to the top has been pretty quick in the world of music. And most of that is by design. But I could go on with my theories about music for a long time. What I want to talk about in this part of the video here is how this story about Jelly Roll was a revelation riddle. And although they claim his plane had to make an emergency landing, there's no evidence of this. There's no footage of it. There's just them standing around, I guess, pretending to look terrified or something. I don't know. So let's talk about this, because this all happened on April 5th. The date written 4-5 or 5-4. Notice how the word emergency sums to 50 and 40, just like the name Jelly Roll. Jelly Roll equals 40 and 50. And the crew was on their way to the CMT Music Awards, which equals 50, along with his wife, Bunny XO, whose name equals 40. And notice how this couple was born 50 days apart on the calendar. Revelation has Latin gematria of 1010. 2024 CMT Music Awards also equals 1010. And remember how I pointed out that Jesus equals 985 in my last decode? Well, in standard gematria, the name Jelly Roll sums to 985. So it makes total sense that a character like this would be used in a Revelation riddle, because Revelation is about the return of Jesus. This is a story about a plane returning to the airport. In Latin ordinal, Revelation sums to 119. If you look at Jelly Roll's birth numerology, you find he was born on a date with 119 numerology. His birthday even falls 1 month and 19 days before his wife's. Revelation sums to 121 and 149 in ordinal. Jelly Roll equals 121 ordinal, and his real last name, DeFord, sums to 149 Latin. The book of Revelation reveals the number of the beast as 666. Well, in Sumerian, Jason DeFord equals 666. And if you take his full name, Jason Bradley DeFord, and then you add up these four numbers in base gematria, it sums to 666. And like I just pointed out, this is a number connected to Jesus. 666 days is 95 weeks. 666 is 95 in gematria. This emergency happened on the 95th day of a leap year. And in ordinal, the word emergency sums to 95. But of course, there's more. Once again, running the gematria of 2024 CMT Music Awards, their destination. Here in Latin, we get the 244th prime number. Why is that interesting? Well, if you look for the digits 666 in pi, you first find them at the 2,440th digit. The word satanic sums to 244 in that same cipher. This emergency incident, which was actually the night before on April 4th, was a span of 244 days before Jelly Roll's next birthday. 244 is the first multiple of 122. And this was also 122 days after Jelly Roll's last birthday. In reverse, Jelly Roll equals 122, and his wife, Bunny XO, was born on January 22nd, or 122. In fact, she was even born in the year 1980. The word beast equals 198 in Latin. But Bunny XO also has primary birth numerology of 122 to go along with her 122 birthday. But 122 is significant to Revelation for yet another reason. When you write out 122, you get Latin gematria of 3031. 331. Jelly Roll's debut single as a solo artist was released on 331. 331. Revelation was written by John of Patmos about the second coming of God's Son, and in Latin, Patmos, second coming, and God's Son, all equal 331. The 331st prime number is 2221, and the book of Revelation ends with Revelation 22:21. Revelation 22:21 is the 404th verse of the book. Bunny XO, his wife, is currently 44 years old, and the emergency landing occurred on April 4th, or 404, while on its way to the city of Austin. Austin equals 440. 44 and April 4th both sum to 144. 144 is mentioned 4 times in the book of Revelation. And check out how old his wife Bunny was. 16,144 days old? And they made a return to Austin, Texas? Austin, Texas, 144? This is what the media is doing. Playing number games with you. And they think you're too stupid to catch on. And you know what? For most of the population, I think they're right. But fortunately, we have computers and some smart people who clued us into this language and showed us what this is really all about. All right, guys, next up, we're going to be talking about April 8th, 2024. First off, we'll be discussing the University of Connecticut's second consecutive NCAA basketball championship. And after I'm done with this, we're going to get to the weird side of this channel, where I look at the organic numerology, proving once again how this code, this language of Gematria, speaks to the existence of a deeper interconnectivity between everyone who lives on this planet and the roles that we all play here. This year's Final Four was held in Phoenix, Arizona. Phoenix, Arizona is known as the Valley of the Sun, and the final was played on April 8th, the same day that the sun was covered up by the moon. And of course, the University of Connecticut is the winner here. Well, all year, I've been talking about how Yale University in Connecticut, the whole existence of this school is an Eclipse riddle. After I'm done, I'll link more information in the description down below. The University of Connecticut is located in Storrs, Connecticut, which equals 223. And think about how 223 is also the value of Stamford, Connecticut. And this game was played one day after the end of WrestleMania. WWE headquartered in Stamford, Connecticut. And wrestling is experiencing a resurgence as of late. WWE numbers are through the roof. With the exit of Vince McMahon from the company, it really seems like wrestling is turning a corner, and they're seeming to make it good again, or at least trying. And I would definitely argue that they didn't try to make wrestling good for a long time, but that's a whole other story. Now, this riddle with the University of Connecticut largely centers around their coach, Dan Hurley, as one may expect. Dan Hurley was hired as the University of Connecticut coach on the 22nd of March, or 22/3, in the year 2018. And this is, of course, our big skull and crossbones number, 223. Measuring from the date he was hired to the championship was a span of 6 years and 18 days. University of Connecticut sums to 618 with caps. And you have to appreciate how Connecticut has matching gematria with Dan S. Hurley, Daniel Hurley, and Dan. And we'll talk more about another Dan Malloy, who was the governor of Connecticut when Dan Hurley was hired. The win this year gave UConn back-to-back championships. In ordinal, back-to-back equals 69. Eclipse, eclipse of the sun, and eclipse the sun all equal 69. UConn Huskies equals 69, just like Yale with capital letters. This game was played 182 days after Yale's big Skull and Bones anniversary, when they turned 322 years old. 182 is the Latin value of the phrase back to back. Rather remarkably, UConn has now won 6 national championships in just 7 Final Four appearances. That stands out because both UConn and Total Solar Eclipse sum to 67. They both also have this 22 Gematria, whereas Skull and Bones is 202, the Brotherhood of Death is 220. Connecticut also sums to the 22nd triangular number, 253. And 253 stands out. Remember, WrestleMania was held in Philadelphia, Pennsylvania? Philadelphia, Pennsylvania, 253. The Eclipse last week started Brown Lunation number 1,253. This brings us to the MVP of the NCAA tournament, UConn's Tristan Newton. Notice how the name Tristan Jamal Newton sums to 253 in reverse. And think again about the name Newton. With a major Skull and Bones riddle with Connecticut. Back in 2012, in the town of Newtown, Connecticut, we had a school shooting. I call this the Dandy Brook shooting here on YouTube because these vultures will lunge at me the second I say these words in accordance with each other. It's actually insane. But I digress. Tristan Jamal Newton in this capitals mixed cipher that I just pointed out. Again, capitals mixed, a very logical cipher using the alphabetic order, but mixing capitals with smalls. His full name equals 463. UConn equals 463 standard. And in Latin, total eclipse equals 463. Total eclipse also equals 713. You may remember that from earlier in this video. Well, their coach Hurley sums to 713. The word eclipse sums to 42 with the S exception. And this I like because University of Connecticut Huskies and UConn both have gematria of 402. They both also equal 408. And this game was played on April 8th, or 408. University of Connecticut Huskies, also 480. Now, next up, I want to talk about this connection with the numbers 99 and 66, as there's a heavy riddle in this game with these digits. This championship game was played on the 99th day of a leap year, and it was a span of 9 months and 9 days before Coach Dan Hurley's birthday. Dan Hurley was born 99 days after Yale's anniversary. And with capital letters, the name Hurley equals 99. Well, not only was he born 99 days after the anniversary, but the school was also 99,081 days old. And 81 is just 9 times 9. But this is also an upside-down 66. UConn Huskies and back-to-back both equal 66. And now UConn won its 6th national championship in his 6th season as the coach. Don't forget, guys, if you add a span of 6 years, 6 months, 6 weeks, and 6 days to the date of the first Great American Eclipse, you get to the date of the second Great American Eclipse. When UConn hired Dan Hurley, it was 66 days after his birthday. Like the word Eclipse 66. And when the championship game went to halftime, it did so with 66 points on the scoreboard. In fact, UConn had 36 points at halftime, and 36 is 6 times 6. And once again, 66 a very significant number to Skull and Bones. Skull and Bones even founded in 1832, which are the same 4 digits in the standard value of 66. 66 is 11 times 6. And Dan Hurley was born on 116. Universitas Connecticensis, the Latin name for the school, 116. But how does the number 66 connect to Tristan Newton, the MVP of the whole tournament? Well, Tristan Jamal Newton sums to the 66th triangular number in Latin Gematria, 2211. And check out his age on the date of the game, 8,383 days. Moon equals 83. Yale University equals 83. Yale's anniversary falls on the date, leaving 83 days on the calendar. And in Hebrew, total eclipse and solar eclipse both equal 83. Also, check out his birthday of April 26th, or 426. Yale equals 426. And when it comes to Yale and Skull and Bones, this emblem is very emblematic of the Jolly Roger. The Jolly Roger, the pirate flag with the skull and crossbones. Well, prior to playing for Connecticut, Tristan Newton played for the East Carolina Pirates. His full name, Tristan Jamal Newton, sums to 233 in ordinal. And Newton was 233 days after his birthday for the shooting in Newtown, Connecticut. 233 is also the ordinal value of 1331, the ultimate eclipse number. And his full name also matches solar eclipse in multiple ciphers. But to end this decode, I want to talk a little bit more about Dan Hurley, because he was hired in 2018. And in 2018, that was the last year that Connecticut had a governor named Dan. Daniel Malloy, or maybe Danell. I don't know. I've never met anyone with this weird name. The name Dan sums to 19 in ordinal, just like NCAA. NCAA Men's Basketball National Championship, even 1090. Well, Dan Malloy's full name, Danell Patrick Malloy, has matching 109 Gematria with Tristan Jamal Newton. And notice how Dan Malloy's last day in office as the governor was 1/9 of 19. Dan Hurley was born on a date with 109 numerology. 109 is a lot like October 9th, which is the anniversary of Yale. These digits are also found in Solar Eclipse and Daniel Hurley, 190. Solar Eclipse also matches Dan S. Hurley and Hurley. The Eclipse and Championship was on 8/4/24. Notice how the name Malloy sums to 84 and 24. He was the governor for 8 years and 4 days. The championship was played in Arizona, where the MVP was Tristan, both 84. This national championship was exactly 5 years and 3 months after Malloy left office on this special double 19 date. It was also 63 months. Solar Eclipse 53, Dan S. Hurley 53, Daniel S. Hurley 63. It was also 14 weeks and 6 days before Dan Malloy's birthday. Dan Malloy for 146. But actually, this 1919 combination, I want to talk about this again because I don't think I've ever mentioned this. I do frequently mention that the number 1,331, when spelled out, sums to 1919. But what I don't mention is that in reverse standard, Yale University also sums to 1919. And the reverse standard method, it was on the screen briefly earlier, but all this is standard Gematria with the alphabet flipped backwards. And how wild is it that Yale University equals 1919? It just makes so much sense in light of everything I've been sharing over the past year. All right, guys. Shout out to everybody who made it to the last decode of this super stream. It's always cool when I do these live streams. I just want to say, you know, even though I have my own beliefs about YouTube suppressing my channel and whatnot and not sending notifications, it is cool to see that when I do these live streams for an hour, the viewer count is always slowly going up, which tells me that more people are chiming in and less people are leaving. And I understand that my content can be a little bit much to absorb at times. I like to think of my Gematria channel as the thinking man's numerology channel. It's always cool to see how many content creators still pop in over here to check out what I'm up to. You know, again, I made this calculator 7 years ago, January of 2017 for the online version. And watching Gematria and numerology explode over the internet, seeing so many people take to it and so many bright minds, brilliant people starting to share this type of work and make their own observations, it's been a true blessing in my life to see my creation put to good use. Now, there are also people putting my creation to poor use, but again, that's another topic for another day. The point is, you know, these things will filter out. I feel like it's good to give everyone the information, let people make their own decodes, come to their own conclusions and judgments. I'll tell you often what I think, my own conclusions, but usually I like to let people make their own minds up based on what I'm sharing. The way I see it, numerology is a way of connecting neurons in the brain. You know, there's a lot of talk, and rightfully so, about how certain psychedelics maybe have the effect where you can eat mushrooms, for instance, and magically people who suffered depression for years or decades snap out of it and they're okay again. And to me, numerology had a similar effect. Seeing how deep the connections between people, events, and just the words and language we speak are to the dates that things occur, nothing blew my mind more than that growing up and even into my adulthood. And it made a lot more sense of the world as we experience it. And realizing that we live in some sort of spiritual matrix where things are predestined. It seems like evil is destined to occur in some people's lives. This just helped me grow and blossom into someone who actually cared about the world for a change, because for a long time I didn't. And part of that was because I was so deep into conspiracy. And while there are many conspiracies going on, I don't think it's to the depth that some decoders suggest. So now that I'm off my soapbox, let me jump onto another one, because I'm going to talk about the organic numerology of my own trip to see the total eclipse. And once again, it just makes sense, right? Because I don't know how many people have talked more about eclipses, especially in the public eye, than I have. I mean, ever since 2017, I've been pumping videos out explaining how events in the news and sports and our personal lives all circle back to this eclipse code. And it stands for reason, right? Because even so far back as biblical times, the story of the crucifixion in the New Testament taking place during a solar eclipse. You know, but the date they give us for the event is the date of a lunar eclipse. So we know that there's something deep here. Well, you know, before I talk about the numerology, I just want to share this photo of the sky on our way to the eclipse. I've never seen chemtrails to this level, I don't think, in my life. And it was strange because this was the first day that it wasn't really that cloudy in the Midwest for like a week or two. But it's like they just couldn't give us perfectly clear skies. Instead, we were inundated with this frickin' haze from all these jets flying overhead. And, I've seen this before, but again, I've never seen it to this extent. It's just crazy. And it's my belief that this actually dampened the experience of the eclipse. Now, when I saw the eclipse in 2017, it felt like it looked a little different. And I don't know if it's just because the magnitude was stronger this year. In 2017, it felt like the eclipse was happening in the sky. Like, it definitely got darker, it got a little cooler. But this time around, it got as dark as night. The temperature dropped probably over 10 degrees. Got a little windy. Visually, it was much more intense, but the sun itself, the corona of the sun, didn't have the same sharpness, and I think it was all this haze to blame in the sky. Another factor could be that the first time I saw an eclipse, it had an emotional effect on me. It was so strikingly beautiful that it brought me to tears. And this one, while, phenomenally beautiful, it didn't quite have the same impact, and maybe that should be expected when you have the same experience multiple times. But yeah, if you've never seen one, and you missed the two over America, I would absolutely recommend you make a trip at some point in your life to see one, because it's truly the craziest thing. So, in 2017, when I watched the eclipse, I used Xavier Jubier's, or Hubier's, eclipse canon to figure out exactly how long I saw the eclipse for, and I couldn't believe it. 2 minutes and 27 seconds was the time of totality where I was standing. And if any one of you saw my last Super Stream, 71, I talked at length about synchronicities I have with the numbers 227. In Hebrew, total eclipse and the United States of America both equal 227. And for this eclipse in 2024, I was exactly 2,027 weeks old. And after the eclipse, the group that I was with, they want to go see the 2027 eclipse in Egypt now. And I don't know, maybe I'll go. But one of my friends, Eric, brought his nice camera so he could actually take photos of the eclipse. And this was my favorite one that he got. Even in this picture, you can kind of tell it's a little hazy, right? But this was the moment that the sun first shows itself, and this is why they call it the diamond ring effect. Really the coolest part. But check out Eric's age. He was the oldest one of the four of us to travel in the car, and he was 14,303 days old. Well, 1433 is the 227th prime number. And of course, his name, Eric, rhymes with my name, Derek, so you got that as well. Before we left for Indiana, we punched in the addresses for several different state parks. And the plan was to monitor the cloud cover and pick the park that had the least cloud cover. But as the day progressed, it realized that, clouds weren't really going to be an issue. So we kind of picked a park at random. We were going to go to Morgan Monroe State Park. However, when my buddy tapped his GPS on his phone, he accidentally tapped Lieber State Recreation Area, which was also in his history. And we didn't realize this till we got there, right? But as soon as we got there, I'm like, oh, that's funny. Lieber State is where we ended up on accident? What kind of happy accident is this? Because a couple weeks before the eclipse, I made this video on the death of Joe Lieberman, which was the only time I ever said Lieber on my channel before. And of course, on the thumbnail, I put the Jesuit Eclipse and Skull and Bones logos, right? And little did I know, when I made this thumbnail, I was essentially scripting my own future. Check this out. The name Lieber sums to 33 and 39 like Eclipse. Lieber also 666, whereas for years I've been talking about 666, the moon, the sun system, all about eclipses. So my buddy Eric, after the eclipse, came up with a suggestion for dinner. And the place played jazz music and served jambalaya, so right away I was on board. I hadn't really looked in the area myself, but I obliged. So my friend Adam ends up pulling up the Jazz Kitchen's information. the official business information for this place that we went to dinner. And I don't even think I have access to this, but he sent me a screenshot showing me their date of incorporation for the new Jazz Kitchen. I guess they came under new ownership in 2007. Well, on the date of the eclipse, the Jazz Kitchen was 6,066 days old. And it was the business that was incorporated on that date. This was the first time I ever used my business card for a meal. Business equals 666. And the gematria of the new Jazz Kitchen Inc. has a boatload of 666 riddles in it. So, as we know, 666 and 666s both sum to 156, right? 156, also the gematria of 33, eclipse the sun, plane of the sun. Eclipse equals 33 and 156 in Hebrew. Eclipses always occur 1, 5, or 6 lunar phases after the last eclipse. And when we got to the restaurant, they seated the three of us at a 6-seated table. And they gave us seats 1, 5, and 6, which I thought was hilarious. And I promise, guys, I never sought to bore anyone with the numerology of a dinner receipt on this channel. I don't care about this kind of stuff. This is silly to me. However, this was the date of the eclipse, so if there's one day I'm ever going to do it, this is it. Also, we got check number 48 for the 4/8 eclipse. But even these numbers down here, $94, right, with the tax bringing it to $102.46. I just talked about these numbers. $9.40, like Secret Society. And when Yale had its special anniversary, it was during Brown Lunation 1246. I mean, there's probably more I could do to play with the numbers here, but I mean, it's just wild. I had to laugh at this. And then think about how, this is all about the Christ crucifixion code. Look at the name of our server, Christina C. She's got the Christ in her name, and it's CC, like the 33. You guys, there is something wild about this world we live in. And it just makes me smile, because this is the side of numerology that, for some reason, some people don't want you to see. This organic stuff, it's sometimes I do agree that it can be laughable, but man, I couldn't believe it. Also, the Jazz Kitchen. Check this out. The Jazz Kitchen has matching gematria with 1331, the ultimate eclipse number, as I discuss in almost every eclipse decode. So, this Lieber State Recreation Area is located in the town of Cloverdale, Indiana. And would you believe the reverse gematria of Cloverdale, Indiana? 103 and 310, like 1331. Also 149, like skull and bones. Cloverdale also equals 888. Jazz Kitchen equals the first multiple of 888. There was another receipt we got for the state park that ended in 5 8s and a 1. Cloverdale also equals 56, like the date numerology for the total eclipse 56. The zip code I was in ended in 120. Eclipse 120. Cloverdale, Indiana, 120 when abbreviated. Even the address for Lieber Park, 1317, right? The same digits we find in total eclipse, Indiana, Eclipse, and Lieber. My channel's name is Gematrinator85, and this is because I was born in the year 85, but it's a nice coincidence that total solar eclipse also equals 85. And the 4 of us that were in the car, it was my friend Adam, and his wife and kids were in the car behind us. So he went to dinner with them, and then we had 3 others of us. Anyway, all 4 of us in the car were born in the year 85. And after we watched the eclipse and hung out at the park for another hour or two, we got back in the car at 4:39 p.m., and 4:39 is the 85th prime number. And if you measure between the birthdays of the 4 of us, there's a span of 201 days between our 4 birthdays. And I had to laugh at this, 201, because of course, this is the big Jesuit Eclipse number. Eclipse code and Eclipse ritual 201. The Jesuit order 201. Ignatius of Loyola, etc. If I'm not mistaken, isn't Indianapolis 201? It is. Look at that. So the 4 of us, with our birthdays 201 days apart, driving to Indianapolis for the eclipse where we stayed that night. But to wrap this video up, guys, I want to sign off with probably the weirdest thing that's happened to me in some time. Now, I've talked about this a little bit before, where I believe that on some level that there is someone watching this work. Not just me, but all of us who are doing these decodes. Maybe me a little more so than others because I created the damn thing and I'm doing this full time. But every once in a while, something happens in life where I'm like, oh, I'm being watched. And that might scare a lot of people, but for me, I don't have that viewpoint on it. I think that there is a small group of people that actually wants this information shared, but they can't do it because they're sworn to secrecy. Now, that's just one of my many theories about numerology, but guys, check this out and just how freaking weird it was. When totality ended, where I was standing at Lieber Park, totality ended at 3:08 and 29 seconds. You can see it right there. 3:08 and 29. Less than 60 seconds later, after the eclipse ended, I got a phone call at 3:09. And look at the phone number that called me. I mean, this is hilarious. Nobody has this phone number in real life. 666-3033? Come on, guys. Are you kidding me? Now, normally when I get a call like this, I ignore it. But this time I picked up. And I just said, yeah, what's up? And the guy on the other end of the phone sounded like he had an accent. Didn't sound like a native English speaker. And he goes, hello, my name is Sam Moore, and I'm inquiring about your property at, and then goes on to say an address, which I guess was supposed to be mine. And I was like, yeah, no thanks, and I just hung up. But I don't think this guy's name was really Sam Moore. Sam Moore is the name of a guy who used to do Gematria decodes on a blog called The Hidden Well. Now, he hasn't posted for like 4 or 5 years. But back in 2017, about a week before I started my own blog, he made a blog post about me, talking about me and the organic matrix and how I sync up with the movie Pi. And he didn't even know that I had the same birthday as the guy who plays the main character in Pi. So this was an aha moment for me back in 2017 that, wait a minute, I'm connected to this thing as well. My numerology matters also. And I just laughed. This guy calls claiming to be Sam Moore right after the eclipse. As for the digits in the phone number, 666 and 333, remember the Masonic phrase, circumscribe our desires and keep our passions within due bounds. Sums to 666 and 333. It also has gematria of 1331, that major eclipse code. And right after I saw the eclipse, the 1331, I get a phone call from this number. And again, some people might be scared by that. That shit made my fucking day. I shared that with everybody. I was like, look at these numbskulls. Somebody is messing with me. And to me, it's humorous at this point. I could sit here and complain about being stalked and harassed and delete my YouTube channel like a wuss. But I'm not going to do that. I'm just going to share with you what happens with me and keep going. So yeah, wild stuff. Crazy world we live in. Crazier things even when it comes to these damn phone numbers. I just smile. Because how can you not? Too strange, isn't it? All right, everyone. That's going to do it for this video. Whether you're watching live or archived, please do feel free to smash the like and subscribe button if you haven't already. Quick shout out to everybody for helping me get to 20,000 subscribers. Even though YouTube seems to unsubscribe several people every day, we still managed to get over 20,000. I don't know how we did it. I think it was 3 years ago I was at 15,000, so really the slowest climb in the history of YouTube, but I think a lot of you know why. This information, it's enlightening. I like to think it's positive. You know, there's a lot of people in this world who would rather we not know very much about the system we live in. And this is the way out of it. Or at least a way. All right, everyone. Peace, love, God bless. We'll talk to y'all next time. See ya.